There.
Okay, I'm supposed to keep this really brief, and I've been practicing motoring through this, and I'm nervous. Okay, so Dockside. As you know, Dockside is on our waterfront, and it's sort of an interesting picture looking southwest. Dockside is 25 acres. I didn't know this. I thought it was smaller than that. 8 of the acres are on land, and 17 of them are under the water. There's a rock mound or a hill that you can see it. It's an old picture of it. It's aged nicely. It rises to 65 feet above sea level, and I'm told it's about 50 to 55 feet above the land there. As you know, it's currently owned by the state, and it's administered by the Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. And right now, the village is negotiating a contract with the state in order to become stewards of the property, to develop it and maintain it. All right. Now, as Mike said, we have been collating and synthesizing scads of community input. Over the past 5 years, there's been a resident survey, there have been community workshops, public meetings, and different research committees made up of volunteer residents. And so there's this treasure trove of information to sift through. And as we've done that, themes have emerged. And so the next 2 slides are going to sort of itemize those themes that sort of kind of pop out at us. People spoke of nature, scenic views for the natural beauty of the park, peacefulness. There were different categories of recreation that people listed and talked about when asked about what they saw for Dockside. Kayaks, informal games, swimming, benches, picnics, building bridges, building boats, and power boats. This next slide lists public and private events. There was a wide range of input about how to enjoy food at the park. Some people were focused on it being exclusively, picnics only, no structures. Some people wanted to rebuild a full-service restaurant that had a bar and could have spaghetti and behold the vista. And then other people thought, maybe something in between, like a snack shack, a little concession. So there was a lot to say and sift through there. Education, interpretation, hiking trails and paths. Continuous green space was a theme that came up repeatedly, as well as access across the railroad tracks from connecting Dockside to sort of the Fair Street area of the village. Now, the next couple slides are listing alternatives that we considered that we did not include in the recommended actions. And those are high-impact uses such as construction of a permanent performance space, a full-service year-round restaurant, and a catering hall or facility similar to Plum Point. That was an example that was given to us at a couple public forums, and power boats. Now, this comes with like a little asterisk. However, in recommendations, we do include recommended actions of putting in moorings. You'll see that for boats that are 30 feet or longer that can't be accommodated by the boat club. Now, it should be said about these uses that the reason why these aren't in our recommendations is these are services and activities and uses that can be found elsewhere in the village. And about the power boats, right now, residents can put in power boats at the boat club, and at such time in the future, if the boat club is unable to accommodate these boats, that question can be looked at again. But passenger ferries can be accommodated at the main dock. Other options that were considered but not included, a public swimming pool, a dog run, open fires and fire pits, a pedestrian overpass going over the train tracks, and other construction is referred to here. And this does refer to the fishing pier and the pavilion and a boardwalk. These were constructions that were included in a concept illustration at earlier meetings this year. Yes, those are the alternatives considered. Next up, we get to the exciting part. So our recommendations for Dockside include sort of two sections. One is principles, guiding principles that should inform how development is pursued, and then the actions. So these are our guiding principles here. And this is all, again, this is based on the community input. So the community has sort of called for principles focusing primarily on the natural features of the park, developing primarily passive recreation, encouraging continued use of the park as a gathering place for the community, development and promotion of water-dependent and water-enhanced uses, revenue generating where possible and, of course, where it's appropriate. This would be in the form of activities, permits, and fees. Phased development should be included here only because there are a lot of ideas, there are a lot of recommendations, and we can't do them all at once. So we want to prioritize them. We want any construction to be attractive and be of sensitive design, attractive design. And last but not least, there must be sensitivity to residents in adjacent neighborhoods or in areas of the village that are impacted by travel to, travel from, or activities in the park. So we were lucky enough to have an illustration rendered that describes what we envision of all of this community input that when you pull it together. And this is what it would look like if you were a bird flying over it. And it's kind of pretty. There's, you see here, some building bridges, building boats, some food concession, fishing. We have shoreline stabilization. That's very exciting. And some trails going, hiking up the rock mound, some parking. But it's mostly green, which meets the primary principle. And, so our recommendations for action are phase one, implementation of a task group. It's a group of people together to help the village board execute these actions. Pretty much also number one, even though it's listed second here. It's very important. Shoreline stabilization, this is a priority for the state of New York. This is their property. And they have identified this as priority action item. Construction of a public access ramp for non-motorized boats. This can be accompanied by providing tow in the water access so people can wade in and enjoy the water. And also identified as an urgent need in phase one is public restrooms. And but because eventually we want the public restrooms to be part of a more permanent formal construction, we envision the public restrooms here that people are looking for to be temporary if they're in phase one because, as you'll see later, we defer them as part of a bigger construction. Also in phase one, providing a home for building bridges, building boats. There's a lot of public support whenever this came up in community meetings. The mission and the focus of building bridges, building boats, which is to connect people with the river and educate people. They have about appreciating the Hudson River. They have activities for children and adults. So we want to be able to provide them with a home if we can. Mooring buoys. This is for power boats that are larger than 30 feet. The village will need to seek permits of the DEC and to consult with the Army Corps of Engineers before those can be put in. So that's something that you want to start as soon as you can because it's going to be a long process. Establish a schedule of uses and activities and permits and fees for use of the park. And while this is going on, though, you want to still promote public gatherings, private events. We want people to continue to use the park because they've all said they love the park and they want to use it. Provide limited parking and start working on a trail up the north slope to different places on the, later when we put the picture up again, you'll see that there are these 2 points that provide lovely overlooks over the river. I want to continue to encourage fishing and camping. Earlier this year, or was it last year? There was some camping that occurred by special permit. And the attention to continuous green space. That's something that we recommended out of Phase 2, a food concession and shelter. And people have, this comes directly out of what the community has asked for. People want to be able to go and enjoy some food and some beer and wine at the park. And this is where our public restrooms would be part of that building and available for use, whether or not you're taking advantage of the concession. Kayak storage and rental, lighting, improvements in lighting, education and interpretation of the site, and temporary installations of art and sculpture. And phase 3, a pedestrian underpass, not overpass, and a trail on the south slope, or steps up the south slope that take people from North Street up the hill and over and into the park. And I just want to make a quick note about the food concession and the idea of a kayak storage and rental situation. These would be points of commerce, and so these would not be run by the village. These would be private enterprises. And I think that's it. So, thank you.